risk IRM affiliate, I should say, and he's an advisor to these people, and he's more into risk modeling, if I can use the term, Rushwa. Now, you see, my basic question to you after listening to such a horrifying and stark reality kind of a presentation coming in is that we as a nation, how do you think we have incorporated the SDGs, so as to say, and then the background in which we have just talked about things? Can you be just be more specific about those things, please?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on this panel. It's really an honor to be on a panel with all of you, and I'm really grateful to be able to share my view. I think that when we talk about climate change, climate crisis, as I'm saying Dr. Gupta, but I'm thinking Mr. Gupta. So I'm going to say Mr.
You can definitely call him Dr. Gupta. Don't you worry about it. The kind of research he's done, it's equivalent to being a PhD.
I haven't earned that as yet.
It's only a matter of time, I'm sure. But I wanted to say that, I think one of the things that, even Jonathan mentioned earlier, it is the numbers are there today. The numbers have been there for a very long time. Climate change is a reality. Our planet is warming faster than any other signs or any other predictions that we've seen. And if we want to maintain our way of life today, even some resemblance of our way of life today, we have to try and make sure that global temperatures do not rise above 1.5 degrees. That is what governments, policymakers around the world are debating post-Paris and COP. There will be COP in less than 3 weeks now, where they will continue having these conversations as the Paris Agreement comes into action this year. So in 2021, the Paris Agreement comes into action and governments are starting to be held accountable. So COP26 is very critical. The question you asked me was about the SDGs. Before we just get to the goals, I want to touch upon a few things. So when we talk about climate change, first, one of the things that we often miss is its impact on our food. It's not just what's happening to our infrastructure. It's not just what is happening to weather. The weather is impacting not just our buildings, it's also impacting our agriculture. It's impacting how we can grow food. We're seeing pests that would otherwise have not been possible, would have not been seen in India, now coming to India. We are seeing droughts. We're seeing failure of our food grains. And we're seeing the spread of disease, not just in the tropical diseases are now available, are seen very clearly and very commonly in all parts of the world. Canada, British Columbia, the one of the districts in Canada, is struggling with outbreaks of malaria. I mean, who would have thought that you would find malaria with mosquitoes in as far up north as Canada? But it's happening, and that's a reality. What's also happening with the weather is as our Arctic and Antarctic ice caps melt, all of the weather streams that actually govern our, where is the tropics, where is the heat, where can you grow what, is all changing. The Gulf Stream is being disturbed. So in general, we're not looking at, I think sometimes as policymakers, we don't look at big picture. We look at, okay, what's going to happen today? How much do I have to worry about till the next election? And I think that's our biggest challenge with policymakers. And as insurance industry, as young people who are in the audience today, as everybody else, we have to start holding people accountable. We have to start holding ourselves accountable, and we have to start holding the people who make promises to us accountable to act on what they are promising. I know I sometimes sound very activisty, with my work. So over the last few years, I've had the privilege to work with the United Nations. I was selected by the Secretary General as part of one of his young warriors for climate change. I also worked with the World Economic Forum very closely. So working in these capacities, it becomes very clear to me that there is a lot of talk, very little action. And I think that as industry today, we have to start working on action. Less talk, more action. The SDGs are a roadmap. I think we're all aware of what the SDGs are, what they include, but they're a roadmap for development and growth. They're a roadmap for where we want our world to be in 2030. And none of those SDGs will come true or will be able to achieve those goals if we don't tackle the issue around climate change. for India, it is extremely critical that we look at climate change as an issue that impacts, all of the goals. It impacts zero hunger. It impacts water and sanitation. It impacts health. It impacts education. And unless we start seeing those intersections, we're not going to be able to achieve any of the SDG goals. I gave you an example about how it impacts hunger. If you look at water, we have this phenomenal program of Jal Se Nal that is being propagated across the country. But what happens when the river systems dry up? What happens when you don't do enough to curb your emissions and you see the glaciers are melting, the rivers will dry? Then what will you do? Where will the water come from, right? Surface water in India, according to Niti Aayog, is more than 70% of our surface water is contaminated. So where are you going to give people clean drinking water from if you don't start taking action to correct all of these mistakes? Why are you still we have a coal crisis going on in India right now, but that is not a crisis we should be having. We should be, if we are at the United Nations General Assembly and speaking about climate change more than once, we should be able to say we don't want coal anymore. But we're not saying that. And that is because for a lot of people, particularly who are of a slightly older generation, they see growth in a particular mindset. We look at growth in this myopic view of growth. How is it impacting us today? What does it mean for a balance sheet today? What does it mean for the balance sheet at the end of this year? And that mindset needs to change. And here is where insurance can play a great role. If you look at the capital markets today, the banking sector is already looking at ESG very clearly. Maybe not so much in India, but you're seeing that in Europe, definitely. The Bank of England has moved very drastic measures to include climate change and climate risk part of their approach when they give loans, when they sanction funds, all of these parameters. We're not seeing that yet in India, but we hope to see that here. But insurance can play a great role in making sure that when you are insuring something, you are putting a price on carbon. And I think that as we do that, we will be able to tackle all the goals, including climate change, life on action, life on land, life underwater, partnerships for the goals. I think that answers your question and puts my point across that we're not looking at it holistically enough, and we're not looking at enough intersections.
Absolutely. I mean, and that is one